Hello, how are you today, viewers? We're so glad you're here. We're going to have a wonderful, wonderful program today for you. Professional writers know the value of a critique and or a critique group. My guest today, Tracy Crump, will share her step-by-step method to give or receive a critique, particularly one that identifies areas that you need to work on but still leaves you standing in the end. Right, Tracy?
Right.
Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews by and for Christian writers, speakers, and artists. This month, we're presenting the Right Start Online Summit. 20 experts are sharing 20 secrets in 20 days. This is Marketers on a Mission, episode number 225, How to Improve Your Writing Through Critiques, with Tracy Crump. Hello, Tracy. How are you?
Hey, Patricia. How are you doing?
We're so good. I'm really looking forward to hearing this because I belonged to one critique group way back when, and it was not one that I described earlier in the opening. It did not leave people standing.
Okay. We need to get you in a good critique group then.
Viewers, let me give you the handout link really quickly because Tracy has a PowerPoint. And it will take up most of our time together, and I won't be able to check back with you until we get a break in the middle someplace. So let me do that really quickly, Tracy. And while I'm doing that, would you tell us did you join a critique group immediately as a young writer, or were you several years in?
It was pretty close to the beginning. That's what I'm going to start out. I've published a lot in Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I'm all about stories, so we will start with that story. We sure will.
Okay. Loretta Edson's here. Hello, Loretta. April Smith Carpenter. I think you know her. Diana Derringer. It's so good to see everybody, and we have more coming, I know. All right, so take it away, Tracy.
All right. Well, of course, your speaker yesterday, Tammy, said don't use PowerPoints, and of course, what do I have? A PowerPoint.
That's what she says. You do what you want to.
She said, be yourself. That's right. And I'm a visual learner, and we visual learners love our PowerPoints and our handouts. So hopefully it's coming up.
Speaking of which, viewers, I already have the handouts printed out. There were two. The PowerPoint is not the same as the handouts.
No.
Okay.
No. And are you seeing it? Because I'm not seeing it on my end.
No, we're seeing your Zoom screen, Tracy.
Oh, hooey. All right, let me try. Okay, so I have disappeared.
Unless it's online.
Share. Let me try it one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll just go with. Okay, all right, let's try this. Hey, is it up now?
Yes, there we go.
Okay, we're on the wrong screen, but that's okay. Let's see. Go up. All right, there we go. Okay, we are good. All right. Well, Patricia, you know what? We are marketers on a mission. But I think sometimes we get so caught up in platform and social media numbers and all the other things that go into marketing that we forget if we don't have a good product in the first place, all the marketing in the world is not going to help us. So I really think that critique is a very important but often overlooked part of marketing. Unfortunately, a lot of writers think of it as criticism. They think of the negative aspects of it. In fact, they don't see the beauty of it like these flowers. All they see are the thorns. We're going to tear up your baby, and we're going to criticize everything. I think you mentioned that yesterday. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And I hope by the time we finish today, everybody will see the beauty of critique. So I promised you a story. Here's the story. When I first started writing, I didn't know anything about writing, and I didn't know any writers. I just knew that God was calling me to write. And the only person that I had to give me feedback was my husband. And all he ever said was, "That's so good, honey." And, of course, he wanted to live another day. But anyway, so when I attended my first writers conference, it was back in 2005. I decided I was going to take advantage of everything possible there. And they said that we could send some pieces in, up to 4 pieces, chapters or articles, whatever, to get critique on them. And so I did that. And when I arrived, I sat down and looked through the critiques. Well, 3 of them were not very helpful at all. And in fact, not even encouraging, even less encouraging. But the fourth one was different. It was an author had gone into great detail. He said things like, don't double space after periods. Well, I'd never heard that. I mean, we were taught to double space in typing class. What does that mean? And then he slashed about the first 2.5 pages of my chapter, and he called it backstory. Well, what's backstory? Never heard of that. Well, he made a lot of other comments, but at the end he said, this is an important story and needs to be told. Well, when I returned home and I made the changes that he suggested, I saw how much it improved the writing, and I was on fire for critique. I thought, I don't have to do this by myself. But, you know, I'm really kind of surprised by how many writers ask for critique when all they really want is affirmation. And it's not the same thing. So I say don't set yourself up for a fall by just looking for praise. If that's all you need, we'll send your manuscript to my husband, and he'll say, oh, that's so good, honey. But if you really want to make a giant leap in your writing, I think there are two things you can do. Number one is go to a conference. And number two is to join a critique group and get some real critique.
And you're going to give us some resources later. Actually, there's some in your handouts. But there are even wonderful online critique groups. We don't have to be local anymore.
No, you don't. Well, the world is open to us. You're right. You're right.
Let me make one other mention, please. Anybody who's joining us right now, we have a handout. We is Tracy. She has gifted us with 2 handouts. The link is above the video where the title of the video is. And the handouts are fantastic resources, and they are different than the PowerPoint she's showing us right now, okay?
And you don't really have to refer to those right now. It's more for later. But I will reference them a couple of times, but you don't have to sit there. You don't have to print them out this very second. So don't worry if you can't do that.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's start by talking about 3 reasons to join a critique group. There are a lot of reasons, but here are 3. And one is to improve your writing. I'm sure everybody here wants to improve their writing. And I firmly believe that every single piece can be improved, whether you're a beginner or a professional. We all still have something to learn. Proverbs 18:15 says, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge. The ears of the wise seek it out. And we want to be wise about our writing. I liked what one writer, her name was Heather Trent Beers, she gave an example of what critiquing did for her. She said, I've learned to accept criticism. She called it criticism. I call it critique. But she said, not doing so, just isolating yourself, is like taking the stairs rather than the elevator to reach the top floor. You spend a lot of time trudging up, while with the expertise of other writers, you can get to the top a lot faster. So we want to improve our writing, and we can do it a lot faster with critique. But having your writing critiqued by others is not the only way that a critique group can help you. Being critiqued by other people, critiquing the work of others can be just as useful, because, when we start watching for things like point of view shifts or inconsistencies, weak verbs, passive voice, lo and behold, we start noticing those things in our own writing. We can even get to the point where we are our own best editors. And that's not a bad thing at all. We don't ever want to become dependent on a critique group to the point that we can't edit ourselves. We always want to be learning and growing. So, and the next point is tied closely to first. If we want to improve our writing, but a critique group can also give us a better chance at publication. And I hope that's the goal of everyone. Our writing, no matter how good it is not going to do anybody else any good if it's just sitting on our computer. So we want to get our writing out there. And I think Linda Gilden said earlier this week, she talked about talking about magazine articles and how one article can reach so many people. If the magazine is shared with among others, then it can reach a whole lot of people. And we have a message that we want to get out. We all, underneath all of our writing, we have a message we want to get out. So a critique group can help give you that little extra spit and polish that will help your writing stand out on an editor's desk. And a good critique group can also give you ideas on where to market. So that will help you publish. And then finally, a critique group will offer an objective point of view. We often become too close to our work, and we can't see it objectively. So we need a fresh viewpoint. And I think the most succinct reason I ever heard for joining a critique group and getting critique came from a lady that belonged to our group years ago. She was a very humble lady, and she said, a critique shows us how our writing looks to the reader. Sometimes we are not aware how our words sound to others. We know what we meant, but shouldn't everybody else? But how it sounds in our head and how it comes out on the paper and how it sounds to somebody else on the other end is not always the same thing. So really a critique is our first chance of getting an audience's reaction. So how do you go about finding a group? Well, that is part of one of the handouts that I gave you. Like you said, it's different ways to find online groups, but there are a lot of different things you can do to possibly find a group. One is to check the Christian Writers Market Guide, and I think that's been mentioned several times in several of the sessions that you've had. If you're writing in the Christian market, I think this is an indispensable resource. They used to list critique groups, but I haven't seen those in at least the last 3 years. But they do list writers groups, and often critique groups are associated with writers groups. We actually do an hour-long critique each month at our writers group meetings. So
Tracy, what's the difference in a writers group and a critique group? What do they offer differently?
I didn't know that at first. In fact, after I came home from that conference all fired up for critique, I looked for a writers group, and I thought, I thought it was a critique group, and I was so disappointed. They did other things like, writing exercises and had speakers, and then I found out what value that was. But a writers group does not necessarily do critique. I mean, we have, like I said, we have speakers, we have writing exercises, fellowship, and with like-minded people is a big part of writers groups. And our writers group actually eventually went on to put on a conference. So, I mean, there are a lot of great things that come from writers groups besides critique. But we did start critique as part of our group because it was so important to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can also look for local or online writing courses. They may know of some critique groups around. You can put up notices at libraries or bookstores. Writers conferences, I think probably more critique groups are born from writers conferences than any other place. You find some people that you connect with there. And then, like you said, now you don't have to be in the same geographic location. We've got the internet, so you can set up an online group and critique that way. And then, like I said, the resource there, it shows you some places. Now, I do want to add a little caveat there. The resources that I put there, it's a mixed bag. So some of these are Christian, some are not. Some are open to the public where everybody could see your writing. Some are closed, which is what I would prefer. So just check them out before you commit to anything there. And some of them require that you belong to their group and possibly pay a yearly fee or whatever in order to take advantage of the critique group. So just check them out carefully. And when all is said and done, you may have to start your own group, and that's okay because that's how these other critique groups came about. So you may have to do that. So what do you look for in a critique group? You want to find one that's the right fit for you. And as you mentioned earlier, not every group is going to be the right fit for every writer. One thing you might want to consider is it a Christian group or a non-Christian group? And there are benefits and negatives for both. A lot of it depends on what you write. Some of the genres you might not find a Christian group to join. So non-Christian groups may urge you to a higher level of writing. Now that sounds kind of sad, but competition is fierce everywhere, but I think it's even more fierce in the general market. And because of that, a non-Christian group that has some experienced writers may be able to push you a little bit more toward publication because it is such a competitive market. And sometimes, with Christian groups, sometimes we're too nice. So if a non-Christian group might, like I say, push you a little bit more. But on the other hand, non-Christian groups may not understand your worldview. And we had that happen with one of our ladies. She belonged to our online group, but also a non-Christian, what I call a face-to-face group. And she's had read them a story one time, or submitted a story to them that she'd already submitted to our group, and we loved it. They hated it. They did not like her Christian references. In fact, they asked her to leave. She said it ended up being a blessing from God. And that's not the case every time. I know several writers who are part of non-Christian groups, and they've had good experiences. But just know that is a possibility, and you may have to keep searching before you find the right group. But whether it's a Christian group or a non-Christian group, all the members should show respect and encouragement to one another. We always critique the writing, not the writer, and that's an important differentiation. I like a motto that one Christian group uses, and they meet in Kentucky, and I met one of the members. She said this is their motto, but she said it actually comes from 12-step programs, and this is what they use. Honesty without compassion is cruelty. Honesty without compassion is cruelty. We would have to be honest to help anybody. Encouragement's great, but we want to be helpful to them. But if we don't do it through the lens of compassion, then we are going to be cruel. We're going to do them a disservice. So you want to find a group where members truly want to help fellow writers improve. And just saying, that's so good, honey, doesn't do it. Proverbs 27:6 said, wounds from a friend can be trusted. And so we want to find a group that we can trust the members to have our best interests at heart. We also, hopefully, as far as encouragement goes, we hope that they will encourage us to submit our work. Sometimes we need a little push in that direction. I've known a lot of people that have finished projects and then just let them sit and not submitted them anywhere. So we don't want to do that. We want to encourage our members to submit. We also hope that we want to see pride in their work. If you're looking for a critique group, you want to find one that shows pride in their work, that they should be submitting their best work. Now, even in a critique group, it should be your best work. It may not be the final product, but it's the best that you can do at that point in time. And if the other members are submitting their best work, then they'll probably also help you to submit your best work. So that's why I say to look for that, because you want a group that's going to help you maintain a high standard of excellence. I like what Anne Mulligan, she's a fiction writer. Some of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with her. She was talking recently about critique groups. She said, we need to trust that our critique partners won't let us get away with anything less than our best. So that's one thing to look for. Also, look for clearly understood rules. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be legalistic, but there has to be some kind of personal accountability. When our one lady, real sweet lady in our writers group, decided she wanted to start an online critique group, but she didn't have any kind of requirements, no guidelines, no requirements. She just said, well, just submit whatever you want to, and anybody who wants to critique it, can do that. Well, as you can imagine, it fell apart very quickly. You have to have some kind of accountability. We're all just so busy, we're not going to do it if we don't have to. So in our group, our online group that I moderate, we have about 3 pages of FAQs and guidelines. And we require that every member submit from 1 to 3 submissions each month. They can't be over 2,500 words because we can't, we wouldn't have time to get everybody's submissions if they were too long. And we also require that each critique 3 pieces of other people's work. And we have been around for close to 12 years now. I've been moderator since 2008. And we're still standing, Patricia. We are still standing. As far as I know, everybody in our group, some of them I think are coming today. So we are all still standing. So it works. And you have to have some kind of guidelines and clearly understood guidelines.
Does your group meet weekly, Tracy?
We don't meet. We're an online group. And so we work on a month-by-month basis. So each month we basically start over as far as the submissions and critiques that we are required to do that month. So it gives you the whole month to work on it. You would think that'd be easy, but everything can get in the way. It's easy to wait till the last minute, but it works well. It works well for me. That's what I prefer. That's my preference. But it's whatever works for you. And a lot of people like the face-to-face encouragement, and that's great because they can be good too. And in fact, we have a group that meets after just for an hour, and I lead that one too, after our group, our writers group meetings. And another thing I wanted to make sure that everybody understood is the leader. You need a strong leader, and I think that's especially important face-to-face groups. And you don't want somebody who's overbearing or controlling, but they have to be able to keep the members on task. And I know one time when we had one of our face-to-face meetings, there was a lady, a real sweet lady who came, but she was kind of a social activist, and so she was very passionate about her topic. And we had divided up the time that we had among the people according to the number of people that had something to share. And so it was her turn, and she just kept talking and talking. And several times I broke in and said, well, go ahead and read your piece so we can give you some feedback. And so she said, okay. And then she kept talking. Well, finally, her 10 minutes were up. Mm-hmm. And I had to say, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move on to somebody else, because it wasn't fair to everybody else who had something to share to let her just go on and on and on. And that happens sometimes. And so I didn't put this in the PowerPoint, but I've come up with 5 things that I think that a good moderator should do. One is to help the people stick to the time limits. I think that's very important. They need to be able to state and enforce the rules. Keep the tone respectful, as we talked about before. Make sure everybody stays respectful. They need to be able to settle disputes. Now, hopefully that won't happen, but they need to be willing to do that. And finally, make sure that everyone participates, because it's, critique is not for wallflowers. It's not a lurkers thing. So everybody, it's not going to work unless everybody participates. We need work to critique, and we need people to critique it. So I think those are some things that a good moderator should be able to do. And finally, I think it's important to have a variety of writers in a group. That gives you a variety of opinions. A lot of people will have one critique partner, and that's okay, and that's good. But when you have a variety of people, they all see it from a different perspective. They all have had their own experiences, and plus they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. So hopefully where I'm weak, you will be strong, and vice versa. And I just think you can get a whole lot more help that way. I think that you benefit from having both beginning and experienced writers. If you're all beginners, if that's all you have and you're starting a group, then that's okay. Like I said, you'll each have your own strengths and weaknesses. You'll still be able to help each other. But if you have a few members that are more experienced, have published before, they can usually help the less experienced writers and get the feedback. You'll get the feedback that you need. And vice versa, if everybody's advanced but you, then you may get discouraged, or you may not understand what they're asking you to do, or even feel like you can contribute. And I like what one writer said. His name is Tim Wade. He said, ideally, everyone in the group will have something to share and something to learn. Mm-hmm. And finally, as far as a variety, I think you also benefit from having both fiction and nonfiction in the same group. Now, when I first joined a critique group, or looked for a critique group, I thought I wrote nonfiction, and so I thought I needed all nonfiction writers in my group. So I was kind of disappointed when the only group I could get into had both fiction and nonfiction. But I very quickly learned that you use fiction techniques in your nonfiction writing to bring your stories to life, to illustrate points. And so I learned so much from them, and mostly from reading their critiques of the other fiction writers' work. And so I think it helps to have both fiction and nonfiction. And I could contribute too, because I read fiction. So I could spot inconsistencies, and plus I am a grammar detail person, as my critique group would tell you. I'm the comma queen. And so I could help them, some of them that might not be as strong in that area, I could help in that. So we all need help in different ways, and we can all help in different ways. But the only thing the only type of writing that I think needs to be in a separate group is poetry. Because poetry is just so different from prose. I have tried to critique people's poems before, and I know what I like. I can tell them if I like it or not, or I can tell them if it rhymes or if it's got a rhythm. But other than that, I think it's just such a different type of thinking and writing that it would be better probably to have just a poets group, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
So, do you want to pause now and see if there are any questions?
Yeah, we have some things to.
So I need to stop share. Is that right?
Please.
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Yeah.
Let me go to Facebook. Janet Warren Lane is wondering, what is the name of your critique group? She might be shopping.
Okay. It's called the KCW Mentoring Group. It was started by Kathy Carlton Willis, and she chose several of us out of other critique groups to mentor. And we limit it to 10 so that we have enough time to get everybody. Hopefully not every piece is not necessarily going to be critiqued every month. But usually if you get it in early, usually you will get a variety of critiques, several critiques. Okay. So we've gone through several different writers in years past, and we have a wonderful group.
Well, we've got Gordon Morrow here, Marlene Houck, Rhonda Dragomir, Loretta Edson, Janet Warren Lane, Melissa Henderson, Gail Johnson is here, Dave Williams is watching, Mary Lester. Mary Lester says, "Hey, Tracy, glad to be here."
Hey, Mary.
Rhonda said earlier when you were talking about that your critique group members wouldn't let you get away with anything, but they would do it kindly, but they would still call you on it.
That's right.
Rhonda Dragomir says that point of view is her nemesis, and her critique partners catch her every time she tries to pull a fast one.
That's right. Can't get away with that.
Mary Lester wants to know, how do you find a critique group? Is that, you just covered that, didn't you?
Yes, and some of that information is on one of the handouts, as far as how you can look online, and you may just have to start your own. You know, if you go to a conference and connect with some people, if y'all really connect well, then start your own. We use Yahoo groups to send our critiques out. That way, all you have to do is send your submission one time, and it goes out to every member in the group. And then when you critique somebody's piece, then you send that to the Yahoo, and it goes out to every member of the group, and that makes it a lot easier.
That's so much. You don't have to have a Facebook group. You don't have to have a website. Okay, It doesn't have to be fancy at all to be effective, does it, Tracy?
No, right. And then there's another place, I know some other groups have used IO groups. I'm not real familiar with them, and I don't know how they, but it's the same sort of thing, I think, where you send one email and it goes out to every member of the group. And it's a closed group that way. You keep your writing within that group, so it's not visible to the general public.
Mary, we don't mind that you were late at all. No, we're so glad that you're here. She just happened to have just covered that, and so it's also in the handouts. The handouts, Mary, are not the same as the PowerPoint that Tracy is going over. And they're basically for reference, those handouts, but they're so rich with content that's very valuable. So make sure and get the handouts. If you need them or anybody else needs them, they are above the video today. Since we're doing a PowerPoint, I'm not able to go back and forth like I usually do. Looks like Christy's giving you some information right now. So thank you very much for pausing there, and continue. Can we pause again before or after slide number 8, and we'll talk about the bonus gift.
Okay, all right, we will do it. All right. Now, how do we actually give the critiques? Okay, well, I say the golden rule of critiquing is critique unto others as you would have them critique unto you. As we said, honesty without compassion is cruelty. So we always need to keep the other person in mind. And sometimes it's a balancing act between giving the writer helpful feedback and encouraging them at the same time. And each person is different, so it takes a while sometimes to learn the right mix. Well, in my handouts, I have listed the how to give critique and how to take critique that Marlene Bagnall used in her book, Write His Answer. And if you're not familiar with this book, it is wonderful. She called it a Bible study. I might call it a devotion book, but it's specifically for writers. Published probably 20 years ago, but it's just as relevant today. And she gave me permission to share her tips in my handouts. And I'm going to mention a few, but you can read those later. I'm not going to sit here and read them to you, but I'm going to elaborate just on a few of them and give you some more of my own, some more do's and don'ts of my own. So she starts out by saying, ask God for discernment and sensitivity. And I think it's always a good idea, and I can't say I always remember this, but to pray before you critique. Hopefully we're already praying before we write, but if you pray before you critique, I think that's a great thing. You can pray that what you say will be just what the writer needs to hear. And I think that's a good thing to pray, and that they will be able to take it, in the spirit that it's meant. Also, find something positive to say before making suggestions for change. That's not always easy. Not every piece is good at the first. I mean, they're going to improve it, and we know that. But sometimes it's harder to find something good to say. But you can always find something, even if it's, boy, I sure liked your title. That was a good title, or that was a funny point, or that was a good point you made about this, or I like that character. You can say some generic things before you dig in and start saying, well, maybe you ought to change this or think about this. So try to be affirming before you start into your suggestions. Now, one of the ladies that used to be in our group, she's gone home to be with the Lord. A real sweet lady. Her name was Leanne Campbell. She wrote a little devotion book for writers called Writer's Devotions to Go. And she said this on this point. She said, just a few words of sincere affirmation let the author know you found something of value in the manuscript. Kind words put us in the frame of mind to listen to any negative feedback that might be forthcoming. I think that's very good to keep in mind. And sometimes, I get in a hurry, and I do focus on the negative because I feel like I'm here to help this writer, and I can neglect the positive things. It's not that I don't think them, but I just don't stop and say them. So I'm glad I have an online group because I can go back. It gives me a chance to go back and say, okay, I'm going to put in some positive things that I noticed too. Or even say it at the end. So, am I on the right? Yeah. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. And finally, Marlene suggests to use a checklist, and that is my other handout. There is a checklist of things to watch for. Now, this is actually a judge's checklist, and I put it together when I was part of a National League of American Penwomen chapter. I headed up 2 national contests. And so I got these from a variety of sources. And and I will tell you, I do not sit down to do a critique and put this checklist in front of me. I think I would drive myself crazy. But I think it's a good thing. It's a good list of things to look for in other people's writing and in your own writing. So that's why I wanted to provide that, because it just kind of gives you an idea of things that you can watch for when you critique. Okay. Now I have some do's and don'ts of my own on giving critique. And one is to avoid the temptation to rewrite or change the writer's voice. If you don't know what voice is, we don't have time to go into that here. You can look it up online, but it's not our job to rewrite somebody else's writing. I really don't even think it's an editor's job to do that. Our job is to make that person's writing better, to help that person improve his or her own writing. So avoid that temptation. Also, don't point out every single error. As Tim Wade, a writer said, don't return the manuscript bleeding like the crucified Messiah. All those red marks can crush a writer. And, and I have to watch that. I have to be careful because I am a detail person, and I tend to do that. Thank goodness my group is kind of used to me now, and so it doesn't bother them. And plus, keep in mind that others, if you've got a group and a variety of writers, then others are going to catch what you don't catch. So you don't have to comment on every single thing. But do point out stray or missing words. And this is a minor thing, but I'm talking about like if you've inadvertently left out a word, or you've got a word in there twice together where you didn't mean to. It is so hard to see that in our own writing. One time I read a short book by a writer who I knew, and she had self-published her book, so she didn't really get any editing on it. And I asked her, did she want me to point out some things that I noticed? And she said, yeah. And so I showed her 3 different places where she either had the same word twice or she left out a word. And she said, I had to read those sentences 3 times before I saw what you were talking about, because she said, it is so hard. I knew what I was saying. I knew what I meant to say. And she said, it's so hard to see that in our own writing. So that's one good thing to do. Also, make suggestions and give examples. I often will suggest an alternate word for something. And it's not that the word may be wrong, but it just maybe there's a stronger word, a stronger verb, or a better noun, more descriptive noun they could use. And the writer does not have to do it. You never have to change your writing. It's up to you. But sometimes it's just the word you were looking for. I love it when people do that, because sometimes it's just what I was looking for. Maybe a title. You may have said, I'm not really pleased with this title. And that may be just the title that fits. So I think it's a good thing. And plus, a comment may spark another idea in the writer's mind, and they may, go off in another direction. I know one of our critique ladies used to say, well, let's up the ante. She'd say, why don't you add a character here that does such and such, or why don't you have this character say this? And it just, that way it maybe increase the conflict or increase the romance or, whatever the action. So, just little suggestions. And I'm not good at that kind of thing. Like I say, I'm the detail person, and I'm not good at the overall picture sometimes. So if you can see things like that, then I think it does help the writer. I know one time, one of our writers, when I had submitted a nonfiction, an article I was going to publish or send at least to a writer's magazine, it was about, the title was Beware TMI, Too Much Information. So about using too much information in controversial type subjects. And so he said, here, you've got 3 points here. He said, why don't you make that an acrostic? And he showed me where I could make the T and the M and the I from those 3 points. And I thought that was so good. That added so much to that piece. And then there was another time that somebody just made a comment. She wasn't even making a suggestion, but she said something about, she said, we think that our pastors and deacons are somehow coated in spiritual Teflon, and that sin just rolls off them. And I said, oh, that is so good. I love that. I said, may I use that? And she said, yeah, sure. And that piece was actually published in Focus on the Family. Now, I don't know if that's what put it over the top, but it could have been. So that was, if you can see things like that or think of something like that, it's sometimes very helpful to the writer. Now, once again, we're not rewriting their piece. We're just making suggestions. And finally, I think on giving critique, it's good to read other people's critiques. Now, in our group, it's the rule is that you do not read someone else's critique on a piece until you've critiqued it yourself, because they can jade your opinion. And we don't want your opinion based on somebody else's opinion. We want your opinion on the piece. So don't do it until you've don't read other people's critiques until you've critiqued it yourself. But you can often learn so much, like I did from the fiction writers in that first group. And you can see things that you missed that, I need to keep that in mind later. You can learn new techniques. You can really advance your own writing and critiquing abilities just by reading the critiques of other people's writing. So those are several things. And do you want to pause here? Do you want me to?
Yes, I do. You have 3 more? Is it 3 more slides?
I do. You want me? But the next 2 kind of go together. So why don't we stop share here and you can
okay.
Look. Okay. Here we are.
All right, everybody. Tammy Whitehurst has joined us. Barb Haley has joined us. I thought there was somebody else. We're so glad that you're here. We appreciate you being here. So in her generosity, Tracy has offered a bonus giveaway. Now, let me just qualify this. I'll do it, I'll say it, and then you correct me or straighten me out where I've missed it, okay, Tracy?
Okay.
If you belong to Tracy's critique group, disqualify yourself, please, because you have access to her all the time. This is for people who don't have access to her all the time, okay? And we're looking for a 1,200-word article. Nonfiction is her specialty. It doesn't have to be a complete article, just 1,200 words of that article, all right? Mm-hmm. It can be a book as well, right? It doesn't make any difference. Yeah. But poetry's not the thing. That's not her specialty. That's not her specialty. So 1,200 words. Don't post it, for heaven's sakes. Don't post it online. You're going to make yourself crazy. Submit it to you, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And get her email off of her her website. Did I hit everything I needed to? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your email is on your website, on your contact page. Is that correct?
Well, yes, there's one. Mm-hmm. Yes, tracycrump.com. Mm-hmm. They can get me that way. Mm-hmm.
So let's go over it again. We're looking for one person is going to be gifted with a free edit and or a free critique. And do they get to choose?
No, it's basically the same thing.
Okay.
And I will use Microsoft Word track changes to make comments.
And what kind of time frame can they expect that?
Give me at least a couple of weeks. Now they let's say they can submit it anytime in the next 3 months. Let's say that.
Oh,
Yeah, they can. So we're talking about one person's going to win this, and you can submit it anytime in the next 3 weeks. So it's not like you've got to rush to get it to me. Give me at least 2 weeks to get it back to you.
okay.
So if you're wanting to, now Chicken Soup for the Soul is my specialty. So if you want to look online on chickensoup.com, and they've got five books in the works right now. If you see something that you think you might write a story for, then go for it. And I'd be glad to advise you on it.
Okay. What a great opportunity. This is very, very, very valuable. Those who are in her critique group already know how valuable it is. But you're not eligible, baby girls.
Sorry.
Okay. So let's, one more time. Submit it within 3 weeks from today.
3 months.
3 months. Submit it within 3 months. So that January, February, March, April, May. So by May the 25th, have it to her, and then give her a couple of weeks to work that in her schedule because she has a busy schedule like everybody else. Okay, this is fantastic.
But we're going to choose one person after when we're finished, right?
Yes. Michelle Nebel is here. She says, I'm finally here. Looking forward to going back and watch everything I missed. It's really good, Michelle. We're glad to have you. Evelyn Mann is here. She says, I'm editing my work in progress right now. Tammy Whitehurst is here. Okay. We will go over this lightly at the very, very end because we're fixing to segue when Tracy's presentation is finished. We're going to segue to the conference that we're highlighting today because that's the purpose of the summit, is to highlight writers and speakers, Christian writers and Christian speakers conferences to help educate you about them so you'll want to go and learn and your life will change in ways that you can't even imagine. So I hand it back to you, Tracy, to finish us up. Thanks.
All right, Tammy, you see we're using PowerPoint. You told us not to use. That's all right. Okay. All right. Now, what happens when we get the critique that we asked for? Okay, we have given critiques, but now we're going to get them. Okay. How do we accept what seems like mutilation of what we've worked so hard to produce? And we said some people think of it as criticism, and Webster's dictionary really, if you look it up, doesn't make much distinction between criticism and critique. Many times it's our attitude that makes the difference. When our younger son was 13 years old, he was offered a job at a radio station. Well, he couldn't drive, and it was on Sundays. It was Sunday afternoon programming, and there was nobody else at the radio station, so I wasn't going to let him sit up there by himself. So I went up there with him every week. And so every week there was a huge banner that went all the way around the sound room. And every week I read it. And it said, attitude is the paintbrush that colors every situation. Attitude is our choice. So we can choose to see critique as an opportunity to improve and master skills, or we can see it as a crushing defeat. It's up to us. So we really have to develop thick skin. Wait a minute, I can't get to my next slide. There we go. We have to develop a thick skin. We can't let what everybody says bother us so much that we can't get the meat from it, the value from it. Once again, Anne Milligan, when she was talking about critiquing, she said, I didn't have any problem accepting the hard critiques. The difference was that while they were hard, I never saw them as harsh. It's all a matter of point of view. I wanted to learn. I read those critiques from the point of view of being taught, not attacked. And I had an experience one time. Actually, a lot of times people ask me to look over their chicken soup stories. And one time a lady emailed me, and she had a couple of stories she had written, and she asked me to look them over. I didn't know this woman, so I had no idea, how in depth I could go with her, how much I could suggest, until I read her email. And she said, I really like sound advice that cuts to the chase. So feel free to speak from your own heart and experience as to how I can improve either of these pieces prior to submission. Well, that just freed me. That released me, that I could let her know, some of the things that I thought she could do to improve her story, and not be so worried about stepping on her toes, and that she would get upset, because some people do, and they don't like you anymore. So I was able to help her as much as possible because of her attitude. And plus, even if we have a good attitude, it doesn't mean we have to take every suggestion. Okay, they're suggestions, not commandments. So like my friend Mary Lane Wade Coke says, it's a buffet dinner. Take what you want and leave the rest. And that can be kind of hard sometimes, because we get conflicting views, because everybody does have different opinions. And what one person hates, another person loves. But that's just the nature of critique. And it's up to us what to accept. And that's where a lot of the prayer comes into. But I do want to say that if more than one person flags an area as a problem area, do pay attention, because that means from two different points of view, they're seeing the same thing as a problem. So go back and look at that carefully. But I don't take every suggestion that everybody makes on my work. It's once again, it's up to me. So Marlene Bagnall, back to her guidelines, her first guideline here on taking critique is to pray about the suggestions. Pray that God will give you a teachable spirit, and ask God how he wants you to use those suggestions. Which one does he want you to incorporate into your work, and which one to ignore? Mary DeMuth, a writer, she said, be teachable. Welcome critique as a friend. Don't resent it as an intruder. But I do think, as what I call critiquees, the person receiving critique, I do think we have responsibilities. And I think one of these is that we need to give minimal instructions. So resist the urge, whether you're in a face-to-face group or online, resist the urge to give the whole history of the story, because you cannot go back and explain your piece to the reader, okay? So don't explain it to me. Let me read it and see how I take it. And I know that there are some details, though, that you can give to the group that will help. And one is that what market are you considering? What slant do they look for? That helps us to know what we need to watch for. And also, what do you need help with? What do you want us to focus on? Are you weak in grammar? Do you need help with character development? Story arc? What do you need help with? So let your critique members know that, and then let them go for the rest. I also say proofread your piece before you send it to the group. Now, we said before that it doesn't have to be perfect, but don't send a rough draft. Don't send something so rough that your partners have to spend all their time correcting things that you could have corrected yourself. It's not a license to be lazy, so we need to do our best. And there are simple things you can do, like running a spell check and grammar check. We all know that's not going to catch everything, but it can help. We can also read it out loud to ourselves. Probably everybody here has heard that the ear is less forgiving than the eye, but we often forget to do that, and we can print it out. And I was always told to take it to another room and read it in a room other than where you write. Something about the change in venue, change of location, helps you see it from a different perspective. So those are some things that you can do. And finally, incorporate previous suggestions. It's frustrating when you don't do this. We had a lady one time in one of our groups who she had written a whole book, and she was submitting one chapter at a time. And the first time I critiqued her work, I spent a lot of time pointing out a lot of things that she needed to change. Like, she was still double spacing after periods. Her commas and periods were outside the quotation marks instead of in. She was using weak verbs, passive construction. They weren't things that were just my opinion. They were things that were hard and fast grammar rules. And so I sent that back to her. The next month, she submitted her next chapter with the same mistakes. That was frustrating to me. It doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes, but just do your best to incorporate what has already been suggested. We always, like I said before, we always want to learn and grow, and we want to improve our work. Paul in 1 Corinthians 3:2, he said he was feeding his followers with milk because they weren't ready for meat. And so it's okay to be a beginner, but just don't stay that way. As Marlene Bagnall said in her book, she said, be accountable to work with your manuscript in order to be a good steward of the group's time. Critique is time intensive. It takes a lot of time. And that's why any prospective new members, I tell them that right off the bat. It is time intensive. But these are some things that you can do to make it a little easier on your critique partners. And finally, I'm going to close with story. I know we've kind of run a little close to time, but at one point, there was a lady in our group who was going to apply for a Q&A column at a Christian magazine. It was kind of like a Christian Dear Abby. And so she didn't have time to submit her piece through our group. They had sent her a question. She was supposed to answer it and send it back. And so it was just a quick turnaround. She was not chosen for the column, to be the columnist. But they told her that she was the runner-up. She was the second choice. And so she submitted what she had sent to them, to our group, and said, I want to be able to do better next time. Show me where I made mistakes so I can do better next time. And so I read her piece and I said, well, I made a couple of suggestions, minor suggestions. And I said, this is really very good. I said, I really can't see, where you went wrong. I said, I think it may have just been a matter of preference. And so after I submitted that to the group, I read the other people's critiques, and they basically said the same thing. They said, this was very good. We don't see anything really wrong, except one lady. And I'm going to call her Annie. And she said, you didn't answer the question. And I thought, yes, she did. She did very well. She pulled in scripture. She just was very eloquent, and I went back and read it, and I thought, oh, she didn't answer the question. And Annie was the only one who saw that. Now, Annie was not good at grammar. She wasn't good at a lot of things. She was multi-published in her little hometown newspaper, but her work often needed a lot of help. And I think even one of the members quit critiquing her work because it was so time-consuming to critique. But she was the only one. And I think that makes a point that we all have something to contribute. As Paul said, again in 1 Corinthians, for the body is not one member, but many. And he went on to say, it's the verses where he said, where would the foot be without the hand? Where would the ear be without the eye? And then a few verses later, he said, and the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee. Nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Nay, much more those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary. We're all valuable in our own way. We all need each other. And to me, that's what critique is all about. All right, I'm going to stop share. And we are back.
This was so wonderful, Tracy. We appreciate it. I have a new appreciation and a new understanding of how a critique group should work because, as I say, I only had access to one, exposure to one, and it wasn't a pleasant experience.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's usually very pleasant, very helpful.
Yeah, maybe I'll always be pleasant, but hopefully it will be helpful.
One of those things that's pleasant in the long run, not in the short run.
Right. Uh-huh.
Let me check now, viewers here. So let me run over this again. Let me review this quickly. Again, we're fixing to go to the conference highlights. If you have to leave, come back and watch them, please. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Really would prefer it if you'd stick around, but that's up to you. Melissa Henderson said, yes, this was wonderful. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Kristen Horion, if I'm pronouncing, I still need help with that name, Christy, I'm sorry. We're all valuable in our own way. Loretta Edson, great job, Tracy, a lot of information. Gail Albergast, thank you, Tracy, lots of information. So before I go to the conference, let me give you the rundown one more time. One person is going to be gifted with, excuse me, a free critique/edit for this professional editor, Tracy Crump, all right? 1,200 words. It could be an article that's 1,200 words. It can be 1,200 words of an article or of a book. She specializes in nonfiction, particularly but not exclusively to Chicken Soup for the Soul. So if you've got that in your mind, jump on this. You have a window between now and May the 25th. That's 3 months out for you to send it in to her and give her a couple of weeks to work it in her schedule, and she'll give you that free, that's a paid service that she offers. And she's offering it to somebody today. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Excuse me. There's if you are eligible for this, that means that if you are not in Tracy's critique group, And if you reasonably can expect that you would have something to submit to her, then I want you to type in the comments, Tracy, her name, Tracy. And that will give us an idea of how many people are that we need to choose from. Only those people. If you're not eligible because you're in her critique group, or if you're not eligible because you're really not quite sure what's all happening here, because you're not really a writer, you're just thinking about it, and that we welcome you, we honor you, but please don't submit to, don't type in Tracy's name. Let me see if we have anybody coming up. Okay. All right. We have a few, and while we have those few, let me give everybody time to write. We have a few more. Let me, if you'll give me just a minute to go over this conference. I had it up, but I do not see it this very second. Where is it, Father? Here we go. There we go. We're not going to go over every point of the conference. There's a link that you can dive deep into every point of the conference. And that's when I interviewed a couple of months ago. I interviewed the director, that is April Smith Carter. But let me give you a few. Carpenter. Mm-hmm. Carpenter, thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Keep putting your name in there. If you've entered it once, you don't have to put it in multiple times. But if you would be eligible, then please do type in Tracy. And then she's going to pick a number. She's going to pick a number. Right. She has just a random number. Have one in your mind, Tracy. And whoever that person is in the line, in the sequence, that person will be the winner. All right.
This is a high-tech kind of thing. So
yeah, very much it. All the way. This is the Mid-South Christian Writers Conference. It's held March the 15th and the 16th of this year in Collierville, Tennessee. That's very near Memphis. You would fly into Memphis if you weren't driving in. It is a Friday. On Friday, they have two particular things that we want to really talk about for just a moment, and you're involved in one of those. These are special pre-conference offerings. Tell us about yours, Tracy.
Well, Andy Lehman and I will be conducting a 4-hour workshop on writing for Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's called Stirring the Pot, Writing for Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it's a lot of fun. We always enjoy it. It's 2 hours of teaching and 2 hours of breakout sessions. You will leave with ideas on stories for actual upcoming books that you can actually submit to Chicken Soup for the Soul, and even a little bit of a start on a story. And everybody loves Andy's session. She is so, I'm kind of the concrete, okay, this is how you do it kind of thing. She is so full of energy. They love her sessions. And so that is a 4-hour session that you choose from. Let me tell you real quick on the other one. That is full. It is a critique session with Johnny Alexander. She's a fiction writer, very wonderful fiction writer, sweet person. She is full at this point. Now she will take a short backlist. I don't know, a waiting list. So I don't know that it will still give you a chance to get in, but just in case somebody has to back out. So you can go to the website and you'll find her email address there, and you can ask to be put on the waiting list for that. But she is full. She was only taking 6 to begin with. But it's a great opportunity if you just come, and we are going to have one-on-one sessions. I don't know if you were going to mention that or not, but where people can meet with editors and agents and authors. And since Johnny is a presenter, she will be doing some one-on-one sessions, and she is a very encouraging person. Her specialty is fiction, though.
Thank you very much. On Saturday, it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and it runs till 5 p.m. in the afternoon. In the conference fees, there's early bird tuition that is still available up until February the 23rd. It's only $80. Come on, $80. There's a box lunch that's included, and let's see, there was something else I was going to say about that, but I don't remember what it was. There's lodging off campus. There's special rates at several different several different hotels that are local and wonderful. 10 Saturday workshops, including Brenda Yoder, and she was a guest of mine way back. She just does a wonderful job. Some of the titles are 15 must-haves for author or writer websites. Another one is Nonfiction 101, everything you might need to know and more. And lastly, this isn't all of them. This is a sampling of the 10 Saturday workshops. Introduction to Writing for Young Children. Board books, picture books, early and easy readers. So a very big variety. Fiction and nonfiction, even children's. That's not everybody includes children's in those conferences, do they, Tracy?
Right. And plus we'll have one workshop on writing for teens. Bob Hostetler, who is our keynote speaker, is going to speak on that. So that's a wide variety, like you said.
Bob Hostetler is, he's just a unique individual. Everyone is. He's a little bit more unique than the average bear, and in a delightful way. He's wonderful. He's very funny. He knows what he's talking about, and he blends the two together very, very well. You will have a wonderful time, and you will learn.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay. Excuse me.
Rhonda Dragomir, who's one of our guests today, she is also doing a workshop, and she is one of our tech people. She actually does our website, and she'll be talking about Microsoft Word. If you think you know Microsoft Word, come to her workshop. You don't know it. You don't know it like Rhonda knows it. She can give you a lot of tips.
There's also, I saw on the website, I saw on the blog a fantastic article, and I've got that in the resources that I always share after the program is over. It's an article by a faculty member, Shannon Van Adder, and she tells a really gripping story about how a writers' conference changed her writing journey altogether. I've got that direct link already set up for you. Let's go back and see. Rhonda's amazing. Christy says Rhonda's amazing. Mary Poliva says hi from Bulgaria. Hello, Mary.
Hey.
Janet McHenry. Hi, Tracy. Mary Lester, this is a great conference. I have been several times. Big bang for the buck. They're so friendly. That's our goal, to help you and to be friendly and let you know that you're here. You're welcome. We appreciate you being here. Have you got a number in mind now? And I'll go and see. It's going to take me a minute.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and tell you the number?
Yes, 1 to 8.
1 to 8. Okay, let's do number 3.
Okay. There may be 10 entries, but we'll keep it tight, so I won't have to sing and dance for a minute while I'm scrolling through here.
Well, let's see. If you do come to our conference, don't forget the meet and greet on Friday night, because it is a load of fun. It's just a fellowship time, and you can meet some of the presenters. We encourage all the presenters to come. So we'll have the agents and editors, and it's a time you can actually make the first contact there. And I do strongly encourage everyone to make a one-on-one appointment with somebody. Hopefully you can get in with your first choice, but even if you can't, you never know when it can be a divine appointment. I have a story, it's probably too long to tell here, about when I was the one who was taking appointments at the Kentucky Christian Writers Conference, and met a writer there, and I can't tell you how that was just a huge God thing. So do make a one-on-one appointment, because they can set you on a road that you might never have imagined.
All right, we have a winner based upon how I'm scrolling, and there's only one way to do it, okay? Because I'm doing my best, trying to do the tech and be the host, share the screen, tell you about the conference.
I don't see how you do everything.
So based upon how I'm scrolling, with no fudging at all, because that's not how we operate, then Gail Atwell, our guest, is the winner.
Yay, Gail! Congratulations. Just contact me whenever you're ready, or you can make contact anytime, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. So congratulations, Gail. 1,200 word article, or 1,200 words of an article or a nonfiction book. Can even be Chicken Soup for the Soul. And since Tracy's given you a 3-month window, if you choose to, you could really dive into the Chicken Soup for the Soul content, the requirements and the deadlines and all those guidelines, everything. And that could be a really interesting, no pressure at all, but that could be a really interesting. Thank you, Tracy Crump. We so appreciate your knowledge and your willingness to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad. So, viewers, this is episode number 225, Improve Your Writing Through Critiques with Tracy Crump. That's a little bit hard for me.
It's hard for me.
Tongue twister. This is the end of the Right Start Online Summit's third week. We have one whole more week to go.
Yay!
That's not great grammar, but we do. We have one whole more week to go. Next week, we're going to be talking about deep point of view, how to become a freelance editor, how to make Amazon work for you as an author. Is that not cool? And then we have how an editor operates. What do they do? What can you expect? How do you know if that editor is a good choice for you? What are the questions you should ask? I mean, really valuable stuff. So we're not finished here. We are not finished. And even after the summit is over, we're not finished. We're here every weekday to serve you, to help you learn from those who are professionals in their field and already doing what it is that they are sharing with us, that marketing element, that workshop. Why are we doing this now and normally on every weekday basis? Because our mission field is online. There are so many people who are hungry for your message that you are uniquely gifted to deliver. God has created a hunger in them for what you have to share. And He's preparing you, giving you opportunities to share it or refine the sharing of it so that these people's lives can change. And in some cases, their eternities will change. What an honor to be a writer, a Christian writer, or a Christian speaker. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. If this is your first masterclass with us, you can access all of the Summit's recordings after it ends and watch them over and over and over in your jammies for free until December the 31st of this year. If you're interested in that, go to marketersonamission.com. Thank you again, Miss Tracy.
Thank you.
If you have, please give Tracy a shout out. And if you have other questions or comments, will you have just a few minutes now or sometime later today to?
I can do it now. Sure.
Okay. If you have a question or comment, put it in there, and Tracy's here to serve you. Thanks so much. See you next week.
Bye-bye.